Amazing. Look at your beautiful hair. I love it. Oh my
You,
goodness. Yes, yes, yes. So
you like it?
good. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi.
Yay.
I'm good.
Awesome.
It's
Thank
so
you
good to
so
see you.
So good to see you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so thank you so much for jumping on this live with me. I know we've been having such a blast in Writers Camp. It's been so fun. And so I just want to talk with you about your experience in the LitHabits for Writers Mastery Program. I used to call it a workshop, and now it feels more like a mastery program to me. So that's what I'm calling it these days. But it was essentially the same program that you went through last year, which is amazing, and so many amazing things.
So great.
So many amazing things have happened for you since that time. So we're gonna dive right into that. Let me get my questions up here. Okay. All right, so Chris, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what kind of writer you are, what you're working on right now, and yeah, all of those good things.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Chris, me and Carrie, and I am a writer of many things, yes. It turns out. I am working on a sci-fi novel, which is the project I was working on while I went through the program, and we'll talk more about that later, but I am well on my way to completing that, hopefully. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I'm really excited. Sooner than I thought, but, it's a book. It's a big book.
Yes.
And then I'm also working on some nonfiction work. I'm working on a nonfiction book on yoga and productivity and habit building, which is directly derived from my time in your workshop.
Awesome. I love it so much. And you are also now a certified yoga instructor. So that happened too since the last time you went through the program, which is amazing. And your yoga videos are so great. So I know we've already had so many people in Writers Camp say that they have all these different interests. They have an interest in science or an interest in wellness, and they're trying to kind of bring all those things together. So you're a great example of that as well, that we aren't just one thing, right? It's kind of like the Walt Whitman, like we contain multitudes. So I love that. All right. So could you share with us a little bit, what would you say are the biggest struggles you were hitting, or any blocks in your writing practice that you were hitting before you joined the 7-week mastery program?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things was I was a binge writer for pretty much my whole life. I would get super inspired and then sit down and write until like 4 o'clock in the morning and really be happy with what I'd written. But then when it came to working on projects, going back to those projects and fine-tuning them, I found it so hard to do that. So I could binge write this rough draft or this little piece of a project while I was inspired, but it was so hard for me to then come back to that habitually and get it to a place where I could submit it somewhere. So yeah, that was a big one. And then the other thing was the fact that I finally had the time to write. So I had carved out a section of my life where I was like, okay, I'm going to move to a place where I am financially able to take off time from work. Like I just devoted time to writing my book, and then all of a sudden found myself completely paralyzed by fear.
Yeah.
Because it was like all those excuses were gone.
Right. It's I was like, oh, I don't have time to write my novel. But then when you have the time, you're like, oh, it wasn't about the time. I love that. So
yes.
Good. So when you were first thinking about joining, and this was, gosh, I can't believe I've been running the program for a little more than a year now. When you were first thinking about joining, did you have any hesitations before you jumped in?
Yeah, absolutely. It was tough. I was like, well, this is a big deal. It was financially a big deal because I had just made this huge move to devote all my time to writing, which then meant really taking an immense pay cut. So I had a budget, and I wasn't sure that if what I was going to receive from it was going to be worth it. You know, like I was like, of course it's going to be good. I know you, and I know your work is amazing, but it was scary.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was some hesitation there for that.
Yeah, awesome. But okay, so then, yeah, what you said right there, you know, there's obvious, you know, an obvious financial hesitation. I know some folks feel the time thing, like, oh, do I actually have time for this? Is it going to work? What would you say now that you've been through the program for all of those hesitations?
I mean, it's just beyond worth it. It is amazing. It's like every week coming back to our meetings together is a reminder that you can read as many blogs as you want online, but having face-to-face accountability and face-to-face constructive feedback. So it's like you can read a blog and it can tell you something and you can try and do it, but you don't necessarily have that blog writer in front of you to like show them, oh, I did what you said.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Did I do it right? Like no one's there to say. You just like, oh, I tried it, but with this, I was actually able to like get feedback and then redirect things that I had to actually like rework things. If I had just read it as a blog or as maybe something that wasn't as personal, I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it. I know I wouldn't have. So yeah, totally worth it.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Okay, good. Your camera was getting a little pixelated there, but we still hear you clearly, so it's all work. Okay. You're all clear now. Awesome. I love it.
Yay.
So what specific changes did you notice, you know, from, you were saying that time when you were binge writing, really hard to find the time, and then when you had the time, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm paralyzed. What specific changes did you notice after the program?
Well, amazingly, so those things that I mentioned were only the tip of the iceberg of things that I was dealing with. I didn't even know some of the stuff that I was dealing with until I went through the workshop. So not only was I able to stop binge writing by creating SMART goals, which were super cool, because if you're like creating this idea, I want to finish this novel, this is this huge goal. And it can be so overwhelming that you feel like I have to binge write because like this is a huge thing. But then when you break it down into these small SMART goals, you're able to work smart and work actually more efficiently. So that was a huge one. Other one was chronotypes, which is basically like your circadian rhythm, which I had never looked into. Mm-hmm. And that helped me set a productive schedule for myself. And I have made my yoga classes kind of around that as well. Yes. So it changed other aspects of my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a big one.
I love that. Awesome. So good. And so what would you say, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one, but what would you say is your proudest achievement from the program? Or coming even out?
Well, definitely.
Go ahead.
For sure. Well, definitely finishing my first draft of my book. I mean, that was crazy. I went from, I forget the numbers now. I think I was at like 30,000 words when we started the program, and by the time finishing, I was at like 95,000, which is huge.
That's
but
huge.
It's like
more than double
our first draft.
Yeah, triple.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah, wow, that is huge. And how many, for context, how many years had you been working on this book before you got that first draft done?
A long time. Like in 2020, it's been 10 years since that first pen to paper. Yes. Yep.
And you're doing
10 years.
And that's not to say that, you know, everybody should rush through their novels. Yeah, some novels take 10 years to write. Some novels take 3. Some novels take 1. Some novels take 20. It really depends. But I think the point here is to not get stuck, right? If it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years, but you want to be in a place where you're not stopping and starting all the time, and you're consistently going back in, and that helps you actually, you know, reach that endpoint, reach that goalpost. You know, so it does. So maybe maybe it takes you 10 years instead of 20 years, right? Because yeah, for sure.
Totally.
All right. So now that you have gone through the program and you've gone through Writers Camp quite a few times, would you recommend this program to other writers?
Absolutely. I recommend it to writers, and I recommend it to people who don't even know they're writers, because it's like literally it's like it helps.
Oh no. Oh,
Absolutely.
there she is. Okay. Sorry,
Oh no.
your connection dipped out just a little bit. Yay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, there we are. Yes. Awesome. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. Okay. How would you describe the community aspect? How did that kind of support you in your journey, the community aspect of the program?
Well, like I was saying before, it was incredible to see how much that accountability and community not only encouraged me, but kept me on track. Like knowing that I had you guys to meet up with at the end of the week, you didn't feel so alone, even when you were alone,
Yeah.
which is crazy, because you already had that built-in community. You knew, okay, you know what, at the end of the week, I've got these people that I'm going to meet up with. And then when we actually were together as a group, you did such an amazing job of facilitating a really safe and calming environment, which was like amazing, because not everyone could do that as well. It's like we really had a freedom to express ourselves and feel safe and talk about the things we were vulnerable with. It's in particularly, and I've done some other workshops. It's the only one I've ever done that's like that. That's so safe in that way.
Yay, I love that. And I mean, that's one of the elements I teach in the workshop. Is I teach you how to continue the momentum, how to continue growing your community, because nothing ever just stops when you take a workshop. Actually, well, many workshops you can go through, or many programs you can go through, and then when you're done, it's like, okay, what now? But I really, really, for my students, I don't want all of their learning to just stop at the end of the workshop. And part of that is to make sure you're growing your community. And one of the things that I try to really focus on is cultivating a writerly community that is safe, that is psychologically safe, because we're doing so much vulnerable work, so much heart work, that it can really, and you're never going to get away from negative comments. You're never going to get away from getting your heart broken every now and then. However, you can do your best to find people who have your best interests at heart rather than their own egos at heart. And we talk a lot about that in the workshop. So it's just awesome. So tell me a little bit of difference. What would you say the difference is between your life pre-program to your life right now and what you're working on? How does it look different?
Well, one of the most amazing differences is the language difference with how I treat myself, which was one of the key things that my family laughs at me now, because one of the things you talk about in the workshop is the reframing of how we talk about our writing and our work. And so instead of being like, oh, I should write today, or oh, I have to write today, instead saying I get to, or I want to. And so my family, even when I'm around them, and I'll slip up and I'll be like, all right, I need to go write. And then I'll be like, I get to go write.
Yes, that's true. I know, I do that with my family too, where I'll catch myself and I'll say, oh, I need to go to the doctor. And then I'll say, no, I choose to go to the doctor. I want to go to the doctor. And it's the same for the writing. I want to be writing right now, not I have to be writing right now. And that really shifts it back to the autonomy piece, which actually has been shown to increase your motivation. So there's a lot of brain science behind those simple language shifts. And I love that has carried on with you throughout, because it's been a game changer in my own life. I love that. All right. So is there any, or actually, can you tell us a little bit about the book you're working on now with yoga and how that process is going? I'm just so curious about that. Yay.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm really excited about it. It was definitely inspired by this program, so it's cool because I realized that my habit building, one of the things we learn about is bedrocks, and I talk about this in my book, and I realized that yoga for me was the bedrock that never changed, even as I fluctuated with other things. It was like, oh, morning pages, oh this, oh that.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, this one never changes. Like, I always am doing yoga. And then I went through my teacher training program and just became more in love with the practice and realized that I wanted to share that journey with others, especially those who are trying to start businesses for themselves. And as a writer and an entrepreneur myself, it's so daunting. You get so paralyzed. So basically what I've done is where your program talks about the whole essence of habits and like LitHabits for life, mine is specifically, it would be like the one element of that bedrock, which is yoga. And so I go into habit building in the first chapter, much of like referencing your work and Pink's work and Charles Duhigg and all of these kind of experts on productivity and kind of reference all those. And then in the second chapter, we go through and we talk about yoga. And so, yeah, it's that. And then it's 30 days of practices that I lead you through.
Love it. So good. I know so many of us could use more yoga, more mindfulness in our life. It's so, so good. So what would you say to folks who are maybe considering, thinking about jumping into the 7-week mastery program, but they're not quite sure? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say, do you want to finish your draft? Just kidding. But definitely, I would say, it's true. It's what happened. The thing that I would definitely say is once you get in it, it is so much more full of things than you even knew that you were looking for answers for. So it's not going to come to the end of even your first day with being like, I could have figured this out somewhere else. It's like the way that it's interwoven with brain science, with books, literature, and writers. You learn about writers and the people that you love with a safe community. You're not going to find it in another place. It is like the marriage of all those things. So it's worth it.
I love that. Thank you, Chris. So can you share, where can people find out more about your work? Where are you living your life online?
Well, thank you for asking. You can find me at @mancarrychris. So that's my Instagram. And that is the main platform I'm using. My phone was broken, so I was having some trouble using that. But you can also find me at Chris Mancarry at Facebook. Add me on there. And then I'm trying to pull up my if you go to my website, actually my website is in my bio on my Instagram. So you just click underneath of that, you can find me there, and that has a list of my classes, my Zoom classes, so you can participate with yoga wherever you are with me, and also some blogs, some writing, and hopefully the link for my new audiobook that will be coming out this summer.
Yay! So good. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christal. And for everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us live. I know we've got quite a few people on the live, which is awesome. So if you are thinking about jumping in to the 7-week LitHabits for Writers Mastery Program, we would be absolutely delighted to have you. The URL to check it out and get all the information is lithabits.com/enroll. So lithabits.com/enroll, and you can read all the program details and get all the information there, or you can just DM me on Instagram and I am happy to have a conversation with you. Yay! Christal, I just love seeing your face. I love talking about writing with you and creativity and yoga and all the things. It's so good. I can't wait for your novel to finally get that published date. I can't wait for your audiobook. It's going to be just absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk soon. So
yes.
All right.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.